What's up, everybody? Nick Dwyer, back for the 10th inning, here with something I have not done for a while. I have been extremely busy as of late, but I promise I am trying to get back to it. I will be trying to do as much as possible, and I will be getting to the September days at some point, but we are back with This Day in Sports History. If y'all enjoy this video, leave a like on it. If you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button. Let's get to it. This Day in Sports History. And we will start off today all the way back in 1661, and yacht racing will officially begin in England when King Charles II would beat the Duke of York, racing from Greenwich to Gravesend. Move all the way up to 1879, and the Cincinnati Enquirer would publish the first report on baseball's reserve clause, and this was actually kept as a secret at first, but once the secret got out, it became an official rule on December 6th. We stay in baseball in 1903, and the first World Series game ever would be played, which would see the Pittsburgh Pirates defeat the Boston Americans 7-3. Jimmy Sebring would hit the first home run for Pittsburgh, and Deacon Philippi would win the game for Pittsburgh, and Cy Young would be the losing pitcher. Stay in the World Series, but move to 1919. The infamous Black Sox Baseball World Series would begin against the Cincinnati Reds, and Dutch Ruther would pitch a 6-hitter in a 9-1 rout of the White Sox for a 1-0 game lead over the White Sox. 2 years later, in 1921, at the PGA Championship on the men's side in golf, Walter Hagen would defeat runner-up Jim Barnes 3-2 to win his third of 11 major titles. Go to the NFL 1 year later, and former Chicago Staleys would play their first NFL game as the Chicago Bears, defeating the Racing Legion 6-0. Over to baseball in 22. Rogers Hornsby would go 3 for 5 on the day in a 7-1 victory over the Cubs, improving his batting average to .401 on the season, becoming the only player to hit 440 home runs in a single season. Now we have a world record to talk about. 2 years later, in 1924, Paavo Nurmi would run the record 4-mile in 19 minutes, 15.4 seconds, and the record 5-mile in 24 minutes, 6.2 seconds. 4 years later, we go to 1928. We stay with Paavo Nurmi, and he would run the 15K world record in 46 minutes, 49.6 seconds, and the 10 miles in 50 minutes, 15 seconds. Back to baseball in 1931, and the World Series would officially open up between the Philadelphia Athletics and the St. Louis Cardinals, as the Athletics were looking to win their third straight World Series. And they got off to a good start, defeating the Cardinals 6-2 in the game. 1 year later, we go to the 32 World Series, and Babe Ruth would have his legendary call against the Cubs, where folklore says he pointed out to center field, called his shot. We don't know if that's true or not, but that was Game 3 of the World Series. The Yankees ended up winning that game 7-5. 1 year later, we stay with Babe Ruth and the Yankees in 1933, and Ruth would make his final pitching appearance in the MLB, pitching a 9-inning, 6-5 victory against the Red Sox, while also hitting his 34th home run of the season. Move up 11 years, and we have the Yankees once again in 1944, but this time the St. Louis Browns would defeat the New York Yankees 5-2 to win their only American League pennant. 1 year later, in 1945, World Heavyweight Champion of Boxing Joe Louis would officially be discharged from the U.S. Army after being awarded the Legion of Merit. Back to Major League Baseball in 1946, St. Louis Cardinals would defeat the Brooklyn Dodgers 4-2 in the first MLB playoff game, as they were tied at the end of the season to see who would be the pennant champion. St. Louis would end up winning the series 2-0. And we stick with pennant winners. 4 years later, in 1950, the Phillies would clinch the NL pennant on Dick Sisler's 3-run home run in a 4-1 victory over the Dodgers, winning their first pennant since 1913. Stay in 1950, and Connie Mack would serve his last game as the Philadelphia Athletics manager, a 50-year span, 1901 to 1950, the longest manager in MLB history, and they would defeat the Washington Senators 5-3 on the day. Finally, in 1950, at the U.S. Open on the women's side in golf, Babe Zaharas Didrikson would tie the Open scoring record at 9 under to beat amateur Betsy Rawls by 9 strokes to win her 8th of 10 majors. We move back to football in 1955, and Baltimore Colts fullback Alan Ameki would become the first rookie in NFL history at that point to top 100 rushing yards in his first 2 games. We go back to baseball. In the World Series 1959, the Chicago White Sox would beat the Dodgers 11-0 in Game 1 of the World Series, making it the White Sox's first World Series appearance since 1919. 2 years later, we have history in Major League Baseball when New York Yankees right fielder Roger Maris would become MLB's all-time single-season home run leader at the time, hitting the home run off of Boston rookie Tracy Stoller in a 1-0 victory at Yankee Stadium. 9 years later in 1970, the Phillies would defeat the Expos 2-1 in the final game played at Connie Mack Stadium in Philadelphia. Then the fans swarmed the field after the game completely destroyed it. We go over to boxing now in 1975, and the Thrilla in Manila would officially end as Muhammad Ali would defeat Joe Frazier via technical knockout in 14 rounds to retain the WBC WBA heavyweight title, and Muhammad Ali would win this series 2-1. 2 years later in 1977, Brazilian soccer/football great Pelé would play his final game for the New York Cosmos in an exhibition against the Santos. And oddly enough, he would actually play one half on each side, and he would score his final goal for the New York Cosmos in the first half, tying the game up 1-1. In Pelé's career, 1,281 goals in 1,363 games played. That sounds pretty good. Now we go to the 1988 Olympic Games, and we will start off in sprinting when Florence Griffith Joyner would win her third gold medal of the Seoul Olympics, anchoring the US 4x100 relay team. Then in the women's 4x400 relay at those same Olympics, the Soviet team would win in a world record 3 minutes 15.17 seconds. Stay in those games, and in women's tennis, Steffi Graf would defeat Gabriela Sabatini 6-3, 6-3 to win the women's singles tennis gold medal, clinching the first and only Golden Slam in history, a Grand Slam and Olympics gold medal. Finally in those Olympics, Yuri Savichev would score in extra time as the Soviet Union would defeat Brazil 2-1 to win the men's football gold medal. 1 year later in 1989, we will start in American football, and Dallas Cowboys defensive end Ed Too Tall Jones would record his 1,000th NFL tackle. Move up 4 years to 1993, and in his first World Boxing Council heavyweight title defense, Lennox Lewis would defeat Frank Bruno by technical knockout in 7 rounds to retain the title. In 1995, the New York Yankees of the American League and the Colorado Rockies of the National League would become the first wildcard teams in the new MLB playoff system. Stay in 1995, move over to the NFL, and in the 5th game of the season, the Jacksonville Jaguars would celebrate their first ever regular season victory after a 17-16 victory over the Houston Oilers. Finally in 95, driver Michael Schumacher would win the Grand Prix to clinch his second straight F1 World Drivers' Championship. Move up to 1999, and the Edmonton Oilers would retire Wayne Gretzky's number 99 jersey in a pregame ceremony against the New York Rangers, the last team for which the Great One suited up in an NHL game. Now we go to the NBA in 2002, and free agent center Wang Zhizhi would become the first ever Chinese-born player in the NBA after he signed a 3-year offer with the Los Angeles Clippers. 2 years later in Major League Baseball, the Seattle Mariners outfielder Ichiro Suzuki would get his 258th hit of the season, breaking George Sisler's 84-year-old record, and Suzuki would end the season with 262 hits. Stay in Major League Baseball in 2015, and New York Yankees would record their 10,000th win in their franchise history, while also clinching a wildcard spot, defeating the Red Sox 4-1. Finally in 2017, at the President's Cup, Dustin Johnson would start with 4.5 points as the U.S. would rout the international team 19-11 to give the U.S. their 7th straight victory. So there you go. That's what happened on this day in sports history. If I left anything out, I do apologize. If I mispronounced any names, I also apologize. But I'll see everybody tomorrow, and I do mean that, for another edition of This Day in Sports History. For Nick O'Dwyer and the 10th inning, be good.